I'm a woman in my early 20s, and this took place several months ago. I live by myself in an apartment, and at the time this took place, I hadn't lived there very long. I had moved into town for my job and didn't know the area particularly well. Luckily, I did have a couple of friends there, but other than that, everything was very new and unfamiliar. I used to go on Reddit a lot, and at one point, I remember even posting asking for suggestions on what to do in the city. Weeks after this post, I went to get my mail from my apartment. That's when a coupon arrived in the mail offering a free escape room experience. The coupon was for a certain day where it would be entirely free. I called up my friend Alex, who is probably my best friend and is always up to do something spontaneous, so I asked him if he wanted to go with me. Before I even got past my second sentence, he agreed. When the day came, I went and picked Alex up in my car and we headed to the address. I didn't know much about the escape room, just from the coupon that had been sent to me in the mail. We drove to the address, and as we arrived, I couldn't help but notice how weird the building was. We were in what looked like the industrial side of town. Most of the buildings looked like warehouses, but I shrugged it off and we went ahead. When we got inside, it appeared to be a lobby. A single desk stood in the center of the room with a man sitting behind it. The man had long hair, which was in a bun, and he wore a black polo shirt. He greeted us as we walked in. I showed him the coupon, and he told us some basic instructions on how it worked. We had to put our phones in a lockbox so we didn't cheat, and then the man showed us where to begin. There was a doorway to the left that said, room number 1. I was a little bit nervous, but when I looked over at Alex, he was super excited. When we got inside of the first room, it resembled a library. There were several shelves with books all over, and the room was very dimly lit. Then the door closed behind us. We both looked around the room, but were really unsure of what to do. We didn't know the theme or story of this escape room. I had never been to one before, but Alex had. He told me there was usually a story that goes with it, some kind of mystery that you need to solve. As far as we were concerned, we were just in a dark room with a few bookshelves. We both searched around, thinking maybe we had to figure it out for ourselves, and there were clues. Unfortunately, after about 10 minutes, we were no better off than when we had started. We had pulled countless books off the shelves, opening them up or looking at the titles to see if they meant anything. They all just seemed like regular old books. Knowing we were timed and would fail if we ran out of time, we decided to ask for help. Alex said he would go ask the employee for some direction. He walked to the door that we had gone in, but when he tried to open it, the door wouldn't open. It was locked. I walked over and had to try it for myself, and sure enough, the door was locked. We both knocked on the door, calling out for help. There was no response. After probably 5 minutes straight of that, we felt like we were possibly in trouble. We started to wonder what kind of escape room this was. The longer we were in there, the more creeped out we were. Neither of us had our phones, and there was really nothing that we could do. We searched all around the room, over and over. We banged on walls and looked at the floor and ceiling. We even moved the bookshelves around. It was just us in the room. By now, over an hour had gone by. Alex and I both sat on the ground in the back corner of the room, talking to each other. We were trying to make sense of it and wondering what was going to happen. Were we being abducted? Why were we in this locked room? I didn't think this place was actually an escape room at all anymore. Just some building with a guy in it. As we were sitting there talking, suddenly the door opened. When it did, we both saw the man standing there. It was the same man who worked there, but he was no longer wearing the black polo shirt. Now he had on just an old white t-shirt and jeans. His hair was all messy now and not in a bun anymore. The man said, "You guys failed to escape. You lose." The way he said it was in a very sinister tone. He then laughed a little. "Can we leave?" Alex asked. "No," the man snapped back at him before laughing a little more. That man must have been truly insane. He then pointed at me and said, "You, over here." I remained where I was. The man then took a couple of steps inside the room. He was walking closer to us, and I had a terrible feeling. I stood up and moved away a little, as Alex did the same. The man was probably 10 feet away from us when suddenly Alex bolted. He ran towards the man and then shoved him. The man started to fall backwards, but caught himself. Alex and I both sprinted for the doorway. It was still open, and we were able to make it out of the room. The man chased after us, but we were running like our lives depended on it, and we went straight for the exit. When we had made it outside, the man didn't chase after us anymore. We got into my car, and we sped out of there. Our phones were still in that lockbox with the man, but at least we had made it out. We reported the whole thing, and it isn't much of a surprise, but the place was not a real escape room. It was just an abandoned old warehouse. I don't know how the man had found me, but he must have specifically mailed me the coupon to lure me in. A couple of years ago, I went to an escape room. It was my first time going to an escape room, and I was really excited. I went to a group escape, which is where they have about 8 or so strangers, and they all have to work together to get out of the room. You have to find clues and puzzles and solve them, and then you go to the next space. Eventually, you solve a mystery and are let out. But the whole time, you're being timed, and if you don't get it on time, you fail. When I first saw the group that I would be in, everyone seemed cool. We all briefly met, and then were let into the room. One person was nominated as the group leader, which was not me. The experience was mostly good. At first, we all talked, and then decided to split up and look for clues. I went to this one corner of the room that we were in. Overall, the room was pretty big, and we were all able to cover a portion of it. That was the first time that I noticed one of the guys in the group staring at me. It just struck me weird, because we were all supposed to be searching for clues, and he seemed deep into staring at me. When I noticed him, he slowly looked away. I kept on looking for clues, and I remember randomly looking around to find him staring at me once more. The guy had seemed normal when we had all briefly introduced ourselves to each other. Now it was seeming a little bit odd, though. Eventually, we all made it into the next room after finding a key and unlocking one of the doors. As we were exploring there, I caught the guy staring at me another time. I decided then that for the rest of the time, I would try not to look at him and just ignore it. We continued, and eventually, we actually ended up solving the whole thing and escaping. After briefly talking with everyone, I left and headed for my car. I was parallel parked on the side of the road. After getting inside my car, I decided to text back a few people on my phone before driving. As I was doing so, I heard a door open and shut from the car parked directly behind me. I looked up in my mirror, just reacting to the noise, and I saw the guy who had been staring at me all night. He was getting into the car that was directly behind mine. What a coincidence, I thought to myself. I sat there, texting back people for maybe a minute or two. Then I pulled out and left. When I did, the guy behind me started to drive away almost the instant after me. I was about 10 minutes from my house, and as I drove back, I noticed the guy behind me was turning at every place that I did. Still, I didn't do anything about it. I just kept driving. Eventually, I made it to my street. The guy was still behind me, which I couldn't believe. I pulled over on the side of the road, basically right in front of my house. The guy did the same. I didn't want to get out, though. What if he got out too and tried to follow me inside? I remained in my car, but so did the man. Many thoughts were racing through my head. I considered getting out and confronting him. I considered making a sudden sprint for my house, and I also thought about driving away. Instead of all that, though, I just kept sitting in my car. Probably 5 minutes went by of both of us sitting there with the engines running. Finally, the man drove away from behind me. This surprised me, but I was really glad to see it. As soon as he was gone, I pulled into the driveway, got out, and went inside. I was still wondering why he had followed me all the way back, though. The guy must have really been a creep. After I was inside for about an hour, I heard the sound of a car driving outside. I looked out the window and saw what appeared to be the same car as before. After looking at it for a moment, I confirmed that it was in fact the same vehicle. I couldn't believe it. This is when I decided that I was calling the police. I took out my phone and dialed. I kept an eye on the car out the window as I spoke with the 911 operator. I told them the entire story, and they said somebody would be out to my house shortly. My only hope was that this guy wouldn't get out of his car. When he had driven away the first time, I really didn't think he would come back, but he did. I kept watching for probably 5 minutes. The car was running, and the man remained inside. Then the car turned off. I ducked down from my spot near the window where I was looking out. Then I heard his door open and shut. My heart started racing. I peeked out the window quickly to see where the man was going. He was walking through the front yard, and I quickly ducked back down. Then I started crawling towards the back side of the house. As I was doing so, I heard a noise up against the living room window. And just seconds later, I heard voices coming from outside. Were there multiple people here? Then I remembered the police. It had to be them. I went over and looked out the window, and sure enough, I saw police with the man. It was a huge relief. Never did I think I would encounter a stalker at an escape room. I worked in an escape room for a few months last year. The job was pretty easy, but could actually be a lot of work. We had all of our customers pre-register and schedule online, so we knew who was coming and when. Then I would work behind the front counter, get them signed in, explain the rules, and help them if they needed it. Then after each group, I would clean the rooms and set them back up. Usually, I was the only one working. One night, I had a group of people come in and play one of the rooms. They were the last group of the night, and by now, it was probably about 10 o'clock. I went into the escape room the group had been in and cleaned things up. Things would usually take me anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Once I was done, I would be able to leave and go home for the night. As I was inside the room, working, I heard our front door open and close. This was puzzling to me. We were not having anybody else that night, so who could be there? I realized that I should have locked the door, but I just hadn't thought to do it. I really didn't think anybody else would be coming in. We never had people just walk in and ask to go in the escape room. I decided to go out and see who was there. I figured it was a person wanting to know if they could play or how it worked. But when I got in the lobby, I didn't see anyone. This was really weird. The lobby was pretty small. Maybe they had started to walk in and then decided not to. That's what I concluded, and I went back to work in the other room, continuing to clean. This went on for probably 10 more minutes. I was just about done when I got a strange feeling. It was like the feeling that I was being watched or something. Maybe I was just paranoid now, but I looked up, and there was a man standing there. He was just inside the room. He was tall and thin and wearing a winter hat. I told the man that he had scared me. He didn't say anything. I said sorry, but we're closed, and he still said nothing. I then asked him if I could help him. The man started walking closer. He was a good distance back, and I made a run for the next room. I was very familiar with the whole place, and I went into the next room over. Then I shut the door behind me and locked myself in there. I yelled for the man to go away. I didn't really hear anything from in there after that. I waited for about 5 minutes. Just barely. I thought I heard the front door open and close. I decided to leave my hiding place and see if the man had in fact left. I really thought that he had. I walked back out and over to the lobby. When I got there, though, I immediately saw the man again. He was standing there, no more than 10 feet away from me, in front of the exit doors. I ran as quickly as I could towards the small bathroom we had. I got inside, slammed the door and locked it, just seconds before the man got there. When I was inside, I called the police right there. I didn't hear any more noises when I was in there either. By the time the police got there, though, the man was gone. I had stayed locked in the bathrooms the whole time. I really don't know who the guy was or what he was doing. I finished up, locked the place, and went home after that. I only worked there for another month and never saw the man again, luckily.